Hi, and thanks for joining us for this edition of Teen Talk, a show where we have a one-on-one conversation with someone we find interesting about things we find interesting. This month's guest is a Lake Charles native who has made a name for herself in the film industry. Emily Moss Wilson is a Barbe High School graduate. She has written and directed 11 films across various networks such as Hallmark, Discovery Plus, and Lifetime. Her latest movie, Rescuing Christmas, premieres on Hallmark this month. Emily has been selected as an emerging female director, and we're so glad she's with us today. Thank you so much for being here, Emily.
Thanks for having me.
So, how did you first start getting into film?
Well, I think I've always been a storyteller. I was kind of the kid that was performing at family functions and was trying to wrangle my cousins into like doing little plays, and sort of that translated into community theater. And then as I went to college, I still wanted to continue doing that sort of stuff. And actually, when I was in high school, I kind of got my first taste of making movies. I kind of found a group of people who I wanted to make, who were also interested in making movies. And thankfully, some of my high school teachers encouraged us to turn in movies instead of reports and things for some school projects. So we got this experience of like shooting things, editing things together, and watching things that we had made. So that kind of like sparked my interest in like, ooh, I love telling stories. I thought it was going to be in the theater, but what is this film thing? And so I went to college and I studied film at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. So I kind of knew that I wanted to do it, but of course the industry's so big that I didn't really know in what way I wanted to do it. So it wasn't until after I graduated, I moved out to Los Angeles and began working in the industry, and had a whole assortment of different jobs, from working from development executives to production executives to visual effects departments to casting departments, kind of trying to find my way. And I was also making my own short films in the process. I was producing them first, and then when I kind of came around to the realization that I think directing is what I ultimately want to do. I loved working with actors. I loved motivating a team. I loved sort of being the creative kind of oversight. I loved being on set. So it kind of just started to kind of come into focus for me. Then I moved from producing shorts to directing one, and that short led to my first paid directing gig, and 11 movies later, and here we are.
Now, what advice would you give to maybe any high schooler that is also interested in the film industry?
I think that just do it. I think I still fail, and again, I feel like in many ways, even though I'm 11 movies in, I'm still just like at the beginning of what I want to do. And I with each project I do, I still learn something that I don't want to do on the next one, or I say, oh, that was a lesson I thought I already learned. I repeated it again. And then I find also that I'm getting better at things, which you should be getting better at things. But I would say my advice is just to do it. And you guys have such an advantage that I really didn't have when I was your age, of just the accessibility of tools to be able to create. I mean, shoot, anybody with an iPhone basically has a more powerful filmmaking tool than I ever had as a high schooler. So there really is no excuse to sort of find a group of like-minded people, write little, and don't bite off more than you can chew too early. I think that's another piece of advice. You don't need to be trying to make a feature film. You just need to be trying to tell a compelling story, whether that's a 4-minute scene that has a beginning, middle, and end, and making that the best you can be. I think that's also important, and grow as your skills grow and as your confidence grows. So yeah, I mean, I think that would be my advice, is there's really no excuse to not be sharpening your storytelling abilities. Because yes, we call it filmmaking, but really it's the storytelling which you can hone, whether it's writing or performing or having somebody read or watch something. It doesn't have to be super polished. Really, the reason we watch movies and TV is because we care about the characters and the story, and then all of sort of the bells and whistles and the tools and all the cameras and visual effects and all that just sweetens everything that's there. So yeah, I would just say, just do it and try to find people that you can grow with, that you can continue to make things with, and that you can fail early, and fail often, because you'll ultimately learn better lessons that way.
So you went to college and you majored in film, correct?
I did, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience going to your university and why you chose that film program?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I applied to various programs. I went to tour NYU, far and wide, but I knew I kind of wanted to stay a little closer to home. So but there at the time there weren't a ton of film programs in Louisiana. So I was kind of looking like, okay, like what's Florida? I was looking at places in Florida. I was looking at places in Texas, and ultimately I chose TCU because I went to the campus and really enjoyed the vibe of the town. I enjoyed the vibe of the campus, but I also liked the size of the campus. It wasn't so big that I wasn't going to be able to not get my hands on film equipment, and so I knew that I could sort of be a part of a theater/film program that was growing and was trying to innovate, but wasn't like massive, and that I didn't have to wait till I was a junior or senior to like touch a camera or whatever. So, but it's been wonderful, and I think the fun part about a college experience is just that having those alumni that you can tap into as you grow. There are still so many people that I went to college with that are still I still keep in contact with, and that are still working and making films. Whether they, one of my good friends is an editor, was an editor on The Office, and another one just shot a movie, won a big film festival award and just shot a movie in Arkansas, a feature film, and another one's a trailer editor, and another one's a sound. So it's like we're all out there doing it, and it's just so nice to have those people that were the people you went around with on the weekend with one camera and some dreams and shot stuff with. So it was really wonderful. To your point, we did a lot in class, but we were also always doing stuff outside of class as well. And I think that is really where kind of we honed our friendships and our trust in each other as creatives, because you can really kind of only do so much within the framework of class a lot of times.
So you've done just about everything in the industry. You've directed, you've produced, you've written. How were you able to work yourself up through different jobs?
And so I interned before in Los Angeles and just on sets before I ever moved to LA. I was always kind of, even while I was in college, like I mentioned, we were always doing, and if we weren't doing, we were trying to figure out who was doing something and saying hey, can I come by and watch you on set? Hey, do you need any help? Hey, just making people in the industry aware that I was passionate and I was interested and ready to work and learn. I definitely think that if I look back at my work history, it's kind of interesting, and I'm talking before directing, but like I mentioned, I did a couple years in development, then I worked for production executive, casting, all that. I always chose my next job not necessarily on exactly what the job was, but who I was going to be working with. Because one of the big things in this industry is relationships. I mean, I think that's probably true for most professional industries, but in a lot of industries, you're in your job and you're in that company and you're there for a while sometimes until you retire. But in film and in television, there's so much turnover because projects are constantly getting greenlit and canceled, and executives are always moving from one company to the next. So every job that you work on, it's very possible that group of people is going to go off and disperse to all these other different companies. So the more relationships you build, it just creates this incredible web of connections that you have. And a lot of times people that worked under you become your bosses, and sometimes people that were your bosses are now doing a complete other thing. And because it's so project-based, again, there's a lot of just sort of turnover and changing of positions. So just the more people you can get to know, the better opportunity you're going to have to just always kind of be able to plug in at different jobs. And especially if you find yourself, like most people do, I think I want to write, but wait a minute, writing may not be my thing. I'm kind of now interested in producing. You're kind of always bobbing and weaving and kind of trying to figure out where all your skill sets kind of, congeal the best. But yeah, I think that would be my advice really, is just, and that's kind of how I found my way, is just through relationships. It was sort of like I met somebody who then, when something came available, I was good enough at continuing to kind of reach out and email people and check in and sort of say, hey, you know, just wanted to let you know what I've been doing, what's going on with you. And just, you know, jobs came along at the right time, and building those relationships, it usually always led to something else.
So you've worked in Los Angeles as well as in Louisiana in the film industry. I know a lot of people view moving to LA as like a necessary step. I was wondering, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't necessarily think it's necessary, particularly kind of in post-COVID world where, you know, Zooms have sort of become just a part of how we do business now, and as well casting has sort of become more, you know, on an online process of submissions. So no, I don't necessarily think that it is a necessity. I definitely do think that just by nature there are things that you can't replicate in other cities. You're going to be able to sort of run into or sort of just be around a lot more people in the industry and sort of be able to do that thing where it's like, oh, I ran into so-and-so at a party, like you guys should get lunch, I'll set it up. And, you know, you can never replace sort of in-person, spontaneous kind of moments like that. But at the same time, you know, so many people that I know have migrated elsewhere since 2020 and still have managed to like make it work. Certainly I have been able to move here and make it work. But, you know, LA, New York, you know, Atlanta a bit, like these are sort of still hubs of like big production and a lot of times where the executives and kind of the decision making is taking place. So I definitely think even if you aren't gonna move there or can't move there, which it's very expensive to live there, hence why we do not live there anymore. But I would certainly like recommend, you know, finding sort of a mentor in the industry wherever you may find yourself and trying to plug into kind of whatever bigger market is nearby you. So, you know, being here, like tapping into like what's going on in New Orleans, trying to travel and go to film festivals in the bigger cities near you, meet people on the film commissions nearby, just kind of anything that can kind of help boost your connectivity to, if you're not moving to LA, whatever kind of big metropolitan area you're in, because that's where you're going to have like the bigger crew base. That's where you're going to have more like ad agencies and, you know, production companies and stuff like that.
So you have a movie that came out this month. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it is called Rescuing Christmas, and it stars Rachel Lee Cook and Sam Page as our leads. And the movie is going to be streaming on Hallmark Movies Now, and it'll be available all month of December and probably beyond. And we filmed this movie with love up in Duluth, Minnesota, a place that I had never been, nor probably would never have gone to, not for this movie, but it was a gorgeous place. And it's such a fun movie because this particular film, when I got the script and it opened in the North Pole, I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be fun. So we have an element of Santa and the elves in this movie that sort of interweaves with our real world story. And the basic premise is that Rachel Lee Cook is a woman who's kind of down on the holidays. It's kind of just full of expectation for her and a kind of a to-do list. She also got broken up with the year before on Christmas, so she's kind of a little bit of a grump this Christmas. And simultaneously, the elves up in the North Pole, two elves have sort of created this pilot program that they want to try out where they give a grumpy person 3 wishes to try to elevate their joy. Well, what they don't anticipate is that she's going to wish Christmas never existed. And so she wakes up to a world where Christmas never existed. And then she and Santa and the elves have to work to try to bring it back and rescue Christmas, hence the name. So what's fun about this one is not only is there a little bit more magic, but there's a little bit more comedy. A lot of times, like, romance takes the front seat in these, but there is definitely a romance here, but I kind of think it takes the back seat to Rachel's character's journey of just, you know, taking for granted something that she had that now she doesn't, and sort of that journey. So yeah, I'm excited for people to see it.
Excited to watch it.
Yeah.
So you filmed a bunch of holiday movies, right? Do you think you've kind of like found your niche and that's like really what you love to do, want to continue to do, or are you looking to maybe expand your horizons a little bit?
Yeah, I think the answer is kind of both. Like, I feel like I've found a really good comfortability in this space, but I'm always looking to like do something a little different. So like I said, when I got this script and there was this North Pole element, like that excited me because it was something I hadn't done before. When I did the movie with Reba McEntire a couple years ago, like that excited me because there was a musical performance element. So I'm always kind of looking for like even what within the Christmas movie space might be a little bit of a new challenge or something that can get me excited in a different way. But yeah, I definitely, I have a lot of hopes and dreams and goals. I just shot an independent drama up in Seattle. So no Christmas, just kind of a straightforward, like I said, family drama that'll hopefully come out next year. And I really would love to direct television. That's like on my vision board. Yeah, I'm a big fan of episodic television and would love to become a television director as well. But I will never say no to a good Christmas movie script. I think it's become a space that everybody really looks forward to. I think the caliber of the movies continues to get stronger each year. The diversity in the storytelling of these holiday movies continues to expand, which I'm excited about too. So if they call and I got nothing on my schedule and they give me a fun script, I'm in.
So the writers and actors strike ended probably a few months ago, one month ago. So how has that affected your work this year?
I was extremely lucky in that I was able to squeak shooting something in like right before, and then this movie I filmed in the Seattle area, we had to actually apply for an interim agreement from SAG in order to be able to work during the strike, and we got that just in the nick of time to be able to film. But that was a whole process of approvals to be able to make that happen. But I know obviously a ton of people whose work just screeched to a halt, and which was it was awful, because we often just think about like the actors and the writers, but there are hundreds and hundreds of crew members who are also out of work because of that as well, and it really was hard on the industry. But I think that what everybody was fighting for was valid, and I'm glad that everything came to a place where people felt comfortable to take that next step. For my projects, even the one that we filmed, the one that Rescuing Christmas that we just talked about, it affected us in post-production. So typically there's a whole process of like re-recording dialogue because, maybe the audio was messed up, or adding a couple of lines to clarify some story beats. And that happens on every movie. It's called ADR. And usually in post, you bring the actors in to sort of like have a little mini session. Well, we weren't allowed to do that on this movie. So there are a couple of moments that we were trying to clarify some story points that we just had to sort of use production audio, which, so that kind of affected us. And then we weren't really sure, a month ago, if we were going to be able to promote this movie or have our actors promote the movie, because that actually really hurt a lot of projects that premiered during the strike. The actors and writers weren't allowed to talk about the work that they had done. And so, which really stinks, because you put your heart and soul and you have this wonderful experience and something's coming out and you can't talk about it. But we were really lucky that the airing of our movie and the strike timed out to where we were able to promote it. And then the one that I just shot in Seattle kind of got affected in the opposite way, whereas we were able to get our agreement on time, we were able to film, but in terms of the casting process, a lot of times from an independent movie, when you don't have a lot of money or a big budget and you're trying to cast actors, the way that you do that is I would try to talk with an actor and say hey, here's why I want to do this movie, try to convey my passion. And so we were prohibited from sort of engaging with actors in that way. And so, I think that I can't really say anything too negatively, because I feel really lucky to have been able to do 2 movies in spite of that. But I'm glad that it seems like we're on the other side of it, and that my friends and people I love and are getting back to work. But I do think it was a super important thing to have happen.
So what advice would you give to somebody as being the best way to get their foot in the door in the industry?
Well, I think that I kind of touched on it earlier. Obviously, like, be doing your own stuff, and that way you can not just say that you want to do it, but you kind of have something to show. And I think that's one of the misconceptions, is that like the thing that you want to show people or share with people has to be perfect or like grand. And it doesn't. It just has to, I think, you know, now that I'm in a position to kind of like look back, like when people send me stuff, I don't expect something from a high school or a college student to be, you know, at the same level as something that like a professional crew is making. What I'm looking at is sort of like the storytelling ability, or just the initiative to get out there and do it. And I think that shows a lot. Like if somebody says, hey, watch this thing that we made, like that to me shows that they're not just sort of like dreaming about it, but they're actively trying to, you know, put things into practice and figure things out. So I would say that just kind of have something to be able to showcase, especially if you know you want to be a writer or a director or a producer. Kind of get whatever a piece of material is, so that when you come in contact with somebody, it's not just saying like, I want to do this thing. It's sort of like, hey, I've been doing this stuff, I want to get better at it, and I want to do it as a career. Would you mind taking a look at this? And I think it is just something that kind of might set you apart, because I think there's a lot of people that say they want to do it, you know, and trust me, it is sort of a very weird, nebulous beast to try to. I'm still trying to figure out how to get my foot in certain doors, you know. Speaking of television, so I think you're kind of always in that position in this industry, because it is so ever evolving. You are sort of closing the chapter of one project and trying to always cultivate what's the next thing, right? For me, like, I don't know what's next for me next year. And that's part of the scary and exciting part of this business. But yeah, I think so. I think having some sort of a thing to share, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be grand. And then also just if and when you meet somebody, like, just make it a point to try to ask, you know, if you can reach out to them in a couple months and share what you're doing, or just say, hey, you know, I really, like, let them know why it was important that you met them, and see if you can, like, you know, connect with them in some way in the future. And don't be shy to reach out.
So one last question. What would you say is next for you?
Oh, that is a very open-ended question. I don't have anything like specifically planned. Like I mentioned, I just finished shooting a movie a month ago in Seattle. I'm about to finish the edit on that, and then I'll spend from now until February doing all the finishing, the color, the sound, the score, the music. So that's definitely on my plate, and I'm excited for that. But I think that what I'm going to try to do next is just develop some stuff. I've been kind of so busy with like shooting and then post-production and then shooting and post-production that I'd like to take a second to work on some development stuff. And with the goal being of like getting some things in a position to pitch, a couple television show ideas and a couple feature ideas. But yeah, I'm hoping to just sort of start taking some meetings in the new year now that I have these 2 new projects, and sort of from that momentum, you know, hopefully something will start like coming to the surface. It's funny because these Christmas movies, they start, you know, prepping and shooting like in February, March, April. So hopefully when the new year rolls around, you know, something will start bubbling to the surface. But, you know, I think that's one thing that is just the nature of this industry, is that when you have these lulls, you kind of always kind of have to be continuing to work to get your next thing. So when I don't have I just turned a script in a couple weeks ago. I'm going to be doing notes on that. But when you don't have kind of an official thing that's like next, you're kind of always spinning the plates in the air and trying to just talk to people, see what they're looking for. So that's what I'm going to do. And it's a perfect time for it too, because as the holidays approach and the new year approaches, everybody kind of gets into that holiday mode, and you know, then you pick back up in January. So stay tuned. I know I'll have my feature Inheritance. That's the drama. I will have that coming out, hopefully premiering at a film festival next year to kick us off. And then Who knows?
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been great.
Thank you so much for your questions.
Thanks for watching this edition of Teen Talk. Remember that you can watch Emily's newest movie, Rescuing Christmas, streaming on Hallmark Movies Now. Have a happy holidays, and we'll see you next time.